And we are going to turn to Missouri Senate District 7. There are 2 people running in that district. We were not able to confirm Michael Brown. We reached out several times. We weren't able to confirm him, but we do have Greg Razer here. So what we'll do is we'll ask him the same series of questions as we would ask in any other circumstance. Welcome, Greg. Our first question for you is, what is the one biggest issue facing South Kansas City neighborhoods, and what is the one thing that you would do to fix it? You have 1 minute for that one.
You know, I think first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate you all setting up this forum, and to the group of folks who put the technology together, kudos to you, because I know that's not easy. I think the biggest thing of facing South Kansas City is the biggest thing that's facing all of Missouri right now on a state level, and that is that we as a state government are not doing the basics of government anymore. We have yet to increase the gas tax in the state of Missouri in over a quarter century. That would be good paying jobs for our citizens, to build new roads, new bridges. Those jobs would then turn into better business environment, which would lead to more jobs. We aren't properly funding education on any level. We aren't providing the health insurance that our citizens have a right to. So on the basic fundamental things that government should be doing, it's a problem for South Kansas City, and it's a problem for the entire state of Missouri.
Okay, we're here at the Trailside Center. We're right next to a fire station, so I muted because of the sirens. My next question for you is, how would you correct or keep the largely inaccurate the property tax assessment through the county? How would you keep those increases from happening again?
You know, I think we need to look at a way, and I talked to several of my colleagues about this year. I served on the Ways and Means Committee, and we had a lot of different ideas that pop up. And the one that makes the most sense to me is putting a cap on how much any individual property can increase in any one given year. And I've seen that number be from anything from whatever you purchase your house for, your purchase price, that is what your property tax is based on for the lifetime that you own that house, to like it can never increase more than 10% per year. And I've seen a range of percentages between that. I think that makes sense for a few reasons. One, it protects the property owner. We don't want to tax people out of their homes. That's not fair. Two, it also in part helps with the problem with gentrification. We have seen some great development happening on Troost, but unfortunately that might tax some people out of their homes. If we had that cap on there, then we can continue to make improvements on Troost without taxing people out of their homes and let them enjoy the neighborhood that they've lived in for maybe 20, 30 years.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what is your opinion on the expansion of Missouri Medicaid, and how can we be assured that the will of the voters won't be overturned again? For example, Clean Missouri and Right to Work.
Stacey, how long do I have to answer this question?
This one's going to be a 2-minute. I'm glad you asked. 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I support Medicaid expansion. I hope everyone goes out and votes on August 4th. I want to ask for your vote, and I want to ask for you to vote yes on 2. Let me explain why we need to vote yes on 2 and expand Medicaid. If we remember what the world was like before the Affordable Care Act happened, for the most part, and I know there's exceptions to this like TRICARE, but for the most part, people got their insurance either through Medicare when you were over a certain age. You were fortunate enough to either be able to afford to buy your own private health insurance or work for a company that provided it, or for the very poor, we had Medicaid. But there was a gap in there of folks who weren't fortunate enough or wealthy enough to buy private health insurance, but they weren't quite poor enough to qualify for Medicaid. The idea behind the Affordable Care Act was get more people on private health insurance and then raise the number or the eligibility for Medicaid. And so what happened is we did this part, but the state of Missouri never raised the eligibility for Medicaid. So there's still a gap of people in Missouri who aren't poor enough for Medicaid and aren't wealthy enough for private health insurance. These folks get sick. They need medical care. And the most expensive way to get medical care to them is to wait until they have to go to an emergency room. It's worse for their health, and it's worse for our bottom line as a state. So we need to expand Medicaid. We need to get everyone covered so everyone has the right to affordable health care in Missouri. Vote yes on 2.
Okay, you didn't use up your 2 minutes there, interestingly. Next question for you. Do you agree with local control of the KC Police Department? And will you be voting yes or no if it comes before you?
Yes, I support local control. If that's on the November ballot, like Mayor Lucas is hoping, I will be voting in support of that. Kind of the sub answer to that question is along the lines of what Representative Washington was just saying, is if the city of Kansas City votes yes, we want control back of our police department, which we haven't had in probably 100 years since Pendergast was kind of the political boss here. If the citizens say, yes, we want it, then we have to ask the question, okay, how will the governance be set up? And what I want to make sure is local control means local control. It doesn't mean that your senators and representatives in Jefferson City decide how you will do it. I want to make sure that the city knows. And if you kind of think of the city as South Kansas City, the Northland, and then east and west of Troost, I want to make sure that all of those segments of our city are comfortable and happy with what we come up with. Once that's done, then I'm going to be more than excited to help carry the water in Jefferson City and bring our police department back home.
Okay, thank you. Greg, what ethical issues have you faced in the past and how did you overcome them? And how will you ensure that your office doesn't face any in the future? You have 2 minutes for this question.
You know, I've heard you ask that question to the other panelists, and I can't think of any specific ethical things that have happened in my office. The 2 things that jump into my mind, one is, and this is just my philosophy. If you come into my office right now in Jefferson City, you're not going to see political things. You're not going to see my political yard signs. You're not going to see Democratic donkeys. I really do believe that there needs to be a stopping point for politics. Right now is the time for politics when we are debating who's going to be our leaders. But once the election's over, it's time to get to work and to leave politics aside. And let's do what's right for the state. And so I really try to live up to that. I will also say, I listen to a lot of the folks who have worked in the building for a long time, and in particular, the women who have worked in the building for a long time. And I've heard of the stories they've told about how they're treated. And so I think it's just a sense of treat people with respect, whether it's the governor or the janitor. Everyone who works in that building deserves to be treated with respect for who they are and for the work that they're doing, whether you agree or disagree with them, agree or disagree. So that's kind of the philosophy I have. And hopefully, you know, there's never an issue that I have to deal with, but if so, I'll deal with it then.
Okay, thank you. Our last question is going to come from Maggie.
Hi, my name is Maggie and I attend a Kansas City public school. What do you see as the biggest hurdle for public education in Kansas City, and what do you intend to do about it?
So we have a lot of problems with education in Kansas City, education throughout the 7th Senate District and statewide. Yes, there are funding issues, per pupil funding issues. There's transportation issues that without getting too wonky into how the state budget works, there's what we pay the school districts for the education piece, and then there's also a slice that we give to help with transportation of actually getting students to schools. And that number has gotten smaller and smaller over the years, to the point that some of our, or not some, many of our rural school districts are choosing to go to 4-day weeks because they literally cannot afford to run the school buses 5 days a week. We also need to look at and this is something I try to express to some of my rural colleagues, is a lot of the issues we see in the most rural parts of our state are very similar to what we see in our urban communities, is that our students need wraparound services. We gotta identify who are the kids that are homeless or hungry or facing trauma at home. Teachers aren't paid to be social workers. We need to have those social workers there so that the teachers can teach and the kids get the help that they need. We also have to make sure that young people are ready to go to college when the time comes. and I shouldn't use the word college, post-secondary education, whether that's a trade school, community college, or one of our four-year institutions. Representative Washington was correct that our students are showing up and they're not ready. We have to correct that. And then we have to make sure that by the time you are out, if you decide to go to a four-year college, you will probably have the equivalent of a home mortgage in terms of a student loan debt. And I'll give you an example that's really stuck out in my head. In 1999, the University of Missouri received 70% of its funding from the state of Missouri. Today, that is 20%. Only 20% of the university's funding comes from state tax dollars. And then we wonder why tuition and fees are going up. Oh, you're muted, Stacy.
Okay, I was saying that's time, but you had a little extra time there because you were the last person here, and we appreciate you being here so late. And so what we're going to do now is take your 2-minute closing statement.
Thank you. And thank you all again for hosting this and for allowing me to speak and answer questions. I wish that I was running at a time when we could talk about really big, exciting issues that Missouri could be a leader on. That's not where we are as a state right now. We are failing Missourians in so many respects. We live in the center of the continent. We have the two great rivers of this continent running through our state. We have interstates that go from coast to coast, Canada to Mexico, and yet we're failing on transportation issues. We could be a distribution center for North America. We're failing on education. We're failing on healthcare. We're failing our citizens. And so I want to go to Jefferson City and represent you because I want to start to try to turn this state around. I grew up in rural Missouri. I'm a Kansas Citian by choice. I have lived here for 20 years and have fallen in love with this place. I know Missouri and I know what we're capable of. And I want to see us reach our potential. That's not going to happen overnight, but we will get it done. And I would really appreciate your vote on August 4th.